There's a revolutionary technique to restore ancient forests like this one without planting a single tree. It's called Foxholes, and it's so simple it almost feels unreal. With this technique, we can create forest-like conditions with way more trees, over 30 times, and twice the plant diversity compared to planting trees the usual way. We're using foxholes to restore the Iwibor forest in southeastern Madagascar, which has almost disappeared, that is home to endangered plant and animal species, some of which are only found in this tiny corner of Madagascar. The name Foxholes, by the way, has nothing to do with foxes, and technically it's not really a hole, but more on that later. Foxholes grow better and faster than just planting tree saplings into the soil and hoping they will make it through all kinds of weather conditions. So does that mean that we need to stop planting trees? Is everything that organizations like Ecosia have done for decades actually wrong? Well, it's more complicated than that. Let me start from the beginning. I traveled to Madagascar with Antonia, Ecosia's tree expert, as well as Cullen, who is the project manager at Phoenix Conservancy, our partners, and Malal, their local lead guiding the project on the ground. Hello. We were headed from Antananarivo, the capital, to Iwibor, tucked away in the southeastern part of this massive island, the fourth largest one in the world, by the way, which is why the drive there took a couple of days. This is the reality of project visits. Sometimes you're stuck in traffic.
We think it's traffic. We're not sure. It can be construction. It might be an accident. It could be an hour. It could be 10.
Yeah.
Good thing we have snacks.
10 hours later,
We've made it. We are exhausted.
I don't even know how to hold a phone anymore.
After a day of rest in a research and conservation center in the Ranamafana National Park, where we spotted some lemurs and I took some time to finish the script for the video, we continued our journey. Madagascar is a very special place. It's home to about 200,000 animal and plant species that are found nowhere else on Earth. However, almost 90% of Madagascar's forests are gone, and the island is on the brink of total ecological collapse, which impacts human and non-human life alike. So the place we're going to is Iwibor, is that how it's pronounced?
Iwibor.
Why is it worth restoring?
It's isolated from the rest of the rainforests that are growing in eastern Madagascar. So it has super unique flora and fauna. There are 4 lemur species, the only population of ring-tailed lemurs that lives in rainforest, and then 3 lemur species that are currently not described or understood by science. So it's incredibly exciting and really, really cool, and we're super grateful to have the opportunity to be working in it and helping grow the forest back to hopefully what it was in the past.
Can't wait to see it! Iwibor, where our project is located, is the only remaining patch of forest surrounded by what is otherwise grassland and savanna, which is why it's also the only source of drinking water in the region around it. In most tree planting projects, trees are first grown in nurseries, and when they're ready, they're planted into the ground at the reforestation site. The problem is that nursery-grown saplings are used to being pampered. So they are watered regularly, and if their leaves have any kind of fungi, for example, that's taken care of immediately. When you plant trees that way, you're creating a field full of fragile young trees who can't get the constant care they would need to survive. But that's not practical when you're trying to restore super large areas like these ones in Madagascar. In a way, when you plant saplings in open fields, you're working against nature. So the question is, instead of forcing trees to adapt to our methods, can't we turn things around? What would the natural conditions be that they find in the wild, and can we mimic those? The answer is yes, which is why I'm hiking up these mountains to show you how foxholes do exactly that. You own a machete as a tree planting expert?
I don't, but I think it's time I do, right?
What are other things you're missing as a tree planting expert? A machete
I am missing a machete for sure, measuring tape, a knife.
Just snacks?
I have snacks, yes. Water, sunscreen, mosquito spray,
Great company.
electrolyte. very comforting.
This is so steep.
Me acaban de preguntar si yo también pertenezco al equipo. Que si estoy con ellos o qué pasa, ¿qué hago aquí? ¿Por qué está señora aquí con una cámara? Y Antonia casi me vende. Let's leave her behind.
Flashback.
Encore une fois, s'il vous plaît. Pour la caméra. Antonia, what just happened?
He just asked if you were with us. En fait, on peut l'abandonner si.
Non, peut-être non.
End of flashback.
Foxholes really are an almost ridiculously simple concept. You dig a hole in the ground and you spread seeds in it of multiple tree species. Because the seeds are then forced to grow in a tight space, they compete against each other for light, water, and soil nutrients. In a way, you're priming them to grow because each of those seeds wants to get to those resources first. All of this just by digging a hole.
And it's not even that deep. So if we look at the edges, you'll see it's only dug about 10 centimeters deep. You'll see that at the edges, it's a little bit higher. That works a bit as a fire break in case the site ever is on fire. They hope that then it won't get here and won't burn down the trees and the plants that are planted here. Okay, to give you a sense of scale, I'm going to shoot up the drone. I don't know if it's gonna work because the drone is having issues with the wind, but we're gonna try.
Foxholes are spaced out about every 15 to 30 meters. We're essentially creating clusters of forest, like little islands, rather than covering the whole landscape with saplings. Let's compare this to natural regeneration and plantations. Natural regeneration, where you protect an area and just let things grow back naturally, has mixed results. Some areas will do great, some won't, and if you don't give it a little help, it might just never recover again, or an invasive species might take over and push every other one out, for example. In plantations, as we already mentioned, you might be planting saplings in an area that is too harsh for them to survive in. It's a lot of work and costs for something that might not work out. Instead, foxholes copy what is called forest succession, which is the natural process of how ecosystems rebuild themselves after they've been disturbed, for example by a fire.
So essentially, first they plant along the edge of the foxhole. These trees that you see here, those are pigeon peas. It's a type of tree that is nitrogen fixing. So this will die after like 5 years or so. Neither Phoenix nor us at Ecosia do we count these as trees in our tree counter because we know they will die. They're just there to prepare the soil for what are then the next species that are going to be planted, which are pioneer species. This would happen in nature as well. These are species that thrive in harsh sunlight and with little water. And then after 2 to 3 years, more or less, you plant what are called enrichment species. Enrichment species need the help of pioneer species for shade and the soil, which they break up with their roots so that enrichment species can more easily access underground water and so on. So this way, slowly, you're creating microforests in the foxholes with different layers of canopy because of these different types of trees growing at different times, which is exactly what happens in a natural forest.
So this is an older foxhole forest that is a really good example of the forest successional process that we were just talking about. So let's head in. This is a lot shadier than it is out in the grassland. It's actually cooler as well, though you can't feel that through your monitor or TV. The soil is actually a lot more moist as well, because we have all this shade and then we also have organic matter from these nitrogen fixing plants called pigeon pea that are bringing nutrients from the air into the ground and then also dropping leaves that decompose and provide nutrients for other species like our pioneers. I hope you can see this, but we have a baby marula tree popping out right here that's doing well. This is one of our pioneers. And then we also have another pioneer species that we did not plant called it's an albizia species. or the local name is Sambala. This plant would normally not pop out in the middle of the grassland, but it can here because it has the conditions that it needs to grow.
One thing that is also clear when you're in here is that the wind is much, much softer because these trees on the edge of the foxhole are stopping it, which I guess also helps then the pioneer species grow, I guess.
Yeah, it helps prevent evaporation of water from the soil, which sort of takes the water out, which is not good for plants. So it helps on that front.
Nice concept. I like foxholes. All right. Ça va?
Ok.
Merci beaucoup. Hein. Vous attendez tout le temps pour nous.
Okay.
Compared to planting trees directly on open land, foxholes pack in 30 times more plants, at least twice the species diversity, and cut overall costs by around 30% compared to using saplings, which include the costs for nurseries.
Take last year, for example, our partners planted about 5 different tree species in our foxholes, and without this method, finding that amount of diversity so far from the natural forest would take way longer. Is there here to show just, whoa, how steep this is, and show in scale. I think it's one of the hardest sites I've ever visited. Not in terms of heat though. That was Senegal, especially when I insisted on digging a half moon with a pickaxe. That was intense. You can watch me doing it here if you haven't watched that video. Ooh, I need to be careful not to fall down. So as the foxholes take root, they're going to help the forest take more and more space. Now that doesn't mean though that we're trying for the forest to take everything over, because the grasslands and savannas in this landscape, they belong here. They're a natural part of it.
Essentially, foxholes prime nature to grow, to return to what it wants to become, quote unquote. In some of the areas we're restoring, the forest will take over. In some, it won't, and that's all right. In fact, if some grassland remains, that's a good thing. It means people can still bring their zebu, the local cow species, and other cattle to graze while still coexisting with the forest. Now, don't get us wrong, foxholes are not a brand new idea. They take inspiration from other techniques like nucleation or general principles of permaculture. Okay, so the concept of essentially digging a hole and planting seeds in there, that's not new in itself?
No, not at all. In fact, these practices have been developed primarily in Central and South America. So we took inspiration from over there and decided to try and apply it here in Madagascar, as well as combining elements of fire protection and especially social enterprise projects that benefit the communities that live around Yves-Ouibourg so that they have a stake, a real tangible stake in the restoration work that we're doing and can benefit from it and contribute to it for decades to come.
And what's the benefit then of, like, first of all, why is it called foxhole? But also, what's the benefit of calling it something else and packaging it, let's say, in a different way?
Yeah, so the name foxhole comes from the sort of wartime strategy of digging a shallow hole in the ground to get out of the way of the line of fire from the enemy, which applies here because wildfires are such a major problem in the grassland that we needed a shallow hole for trees to take refuge in as fires sweep through the landscape. And the utility of having this name foxhole is that a lot of restoration techniques don't have catchy names. And because of that, it's kind of difficult for a lot of people, practitioners especially, to grasp concepts that might have super fancy, like sciencey names that are kind of hard to understand on their face. But foxhole forests, in combination with how they look visually, are kind of a neat way to package them, the concept together so that we can make them accessible to people globally. So they can take this strategy and then apply it to their ecosystems and hopefully get more people everywhere working with these concepts.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Still, like in any reforestation project, there's an even bigger challenge than getting the trees growing, which is keeping the trees standing for decades to come.
Once the trees are growing, what stops people from cutting them down again for timber, for example? But before we get into that, in case you're new here, you might be wondering what Ecosia even is and how we finance projects like these. Ecosia is a search engine and a browser. It's free for you, but we invest 100% of our profits into climate action. You can use it on your computer or download our app. Do consider doing so. You see how that's making a difference here in Madagascar. If you check out our YouTube channel, you'll see how our users are helping us restore ecosystems all over the world. And now, let's get back to the video. Go.
But then you're the one who has to.
Yeah, I know. Okay. Might be a bit unstable. You know what?
From in here?
You could walk in on this side. Cheers.
Can you repeat what you just said, please?
Instead of walking backwards into the bund, you could just walk into this conveniently placed gap that's designed for water and people to easily enter the forest.
You crying?
So we're in one of the fire breaks that you guys build around the foxholes and the forest. Why is that? Tell us more.
Yeah, so most of the fires in Madagascar are set by people. In fact, about 30% of Madagascar's entire land surface burns every single year on average. Here, it's probably actually a little bit higher than that. And it's set because people rely on ranging cattle in this region, and setting fires is a good way to replenish the soil and restart grass growth so that the cows have better forage and helps them grow better. But unfortunately, those fires often run up the hills from the lowlands and end up burning into the forest.
80% of the Malagasy population depends on subsistence farming and cattle grazing for their livelihood. Which is why, like in every other place where Ecosia restores landscapes, it's not enough to apply clever planting techniques. You need to observe the context you're in and understand how to change the local economy from an extractive one from nature to one that protects it and secures people's livelihoods.
So how do you make sure of that? How do you involve the local community?
So we involve communities at every level of this process. We don't build fire breaks, we don't build foxhole-forests without getting permission from local communities to do that. And then also we hire thousands of people from the surrounding region to actually do all of this work by hand, which provides direct income from those jobs.
Okay, so they're paid for doing the foxholes and the seeding. All of that is seasonal, that happens in the dry season. What about the long term? How do you make sure that in the long term there's also a local economy?
Yeah, so we are working to build a restoration and conservation-based local economy so that people are always incentivized to protect forest and to build more forest and disincentivized from cutting it down.
What's an example?
So we are looking at social enterprise projects that are connected to restoration, and one great example are marula trees and the oil that comes from their fruits.
Okay. Do you want to show me what you do with that?
Absolutely.
Go. It's too windy here anyway.
So this is our marula seed oil press. It's really pretty simple. This is a car jack actually, and we can crank it up and it pushes this platform upwards. We put the marula seeds in this basket, and as the platform moves up, it moves into this piston, and that presses the oil out through these holes, and the oil drips down, and we would have a bottle right here. And the idea is that local communities can use this press and sell the oil and earn income directly from that supports their livelihoods. And then also, Phoenix Conservancy, when we buy the oil from them, we plan on selling it on international markets, and the revenue that's generated from those sales we will turn right back into restoration work here in Madagascar, as well as creating a community development fund that communities will have discretion over how those funds are spent on things like improving roads, building schools, hiring teachers, supplying health clinics, all those sorts of things.
Je m'appelle Antoine, je suis le chef de site de la nouvelle aire protégée du Fouillebourg. Et mon rôle principal, c'est l'idée de diriger l'équipe ici sur terrain pour la mise en œuvre de toutes ces activités.
Je suis Malal, je suis la superviseure technique du projet à Fouillebourg. Je suis basée à Tana, mais de temps en temps, je viens sur terrain pour renforcer l'équipe dans toutes les activités parce que vous savez, il y a pas mal d'activités. Quelquefois, l'équipe est trop chargée et je viens pour supporter l'équipe.
Et c'est en 2021 qu'on a débuté la mise en place des Foxhole-Forest. Pour la communauté locale, ces projets sont vraiment bénéfiques. La population locale gagne certaines rémunérations sur la mise en œuvre de tous les travaux ici. Ça les aide à acheter des vêtements, pour acheter des fournitures scolaires pour leurs enfants.
Il y a aussi la conviction des villageois par rapport à l'amélioration de la qualité de la quantité de production. À partir de 2020-2021, ils peuvent tout cultiver. Et avant, ils disent qu'ils ne peuvent, s'ils peuvent cultiver du riz, c'est seulement une fois par an. Vers 2020-2021, et jusqu'à maintenant, ils peuvent cultiver 2-3 fois même par année le riz.
J'ai choisi de travailler ici à Fouillebourg parce que j'aimerais participer à la réussite de la conservation d'un écosystème qui est presque perdu. Mais moi, j'aimerais que je fasse partie de cette équipe et établir une nouvelle approche de la conservation de la biodiversité, une nouvelle approche d'impliquer la communauté locale dans la conservation.
Quelle est déjà la question?
It's still too early to tell because Phoenix has only been working here for a couple of years, but Cullen told me that they're already seeing some very early indications that human-made fires around the areas they're working in have gone down. Seeing the initial success of Foxholes here, we also connected Phoenix Conservancy with their partners TBSE, who work a bit further south from Iwibor around the city of Fort-Dauphin. Last year, tree survival rates with TBSE in open landscapes were low, so we started using Foxholes here as well.
The natural electrolytes before going. C'était l'hôtel qui m'a appelé tout à l'heure. Parce que c'était pas dans.
I'm making it sound casual in the video, but getting to TBSE was an adventure in itself again. The roads from Iwibor were blocked, so we drove 14 hours back to the capital to then catch a flight back all the way down. We were accompanied by Narindra from TGBS, which sounds confusingly similar to TBSE, but it's actually an organization with whom Ecosia has co-developed a tree planting certificate. We told you all about it in this video. Once we made it to Fort-Dauphin, we still had a full day hike ahead of us, up into the mountains to reach TBSE's research center tucked in this valley over here. Once up there, we finally saw their freshly dug foxholes, which are only a couple of months old, but already had some trees growing in them.
Are you happy with the foxholes?
I'm very happy with the foxholes. Look how they're doing. These will be big trees one day.
Oh, bébé.
Bébé.
And those are seeds.
They're germinated from the seeds that were planted here.
So you've been monitoring now foxholes for a couple of days.
Yes, I have.
And is it working?
I think it is.
What have you found?
Well, the fact that you already see a lot of seeds germinating is a really good sign. You already see them looking like this. I find that very motivating. And now we just have to hope that they're going to survive through the dry seasons.
Mm-hmm. And I think there weren't many trees in our foxholes or between our foxholes, but in the older ones,
from Phoenix that they were already planted a couple of years ago?
Yeah.
What did you find there?
So there, we didn't see too much growing inside the foxholes. I think we still need a bit more time to see that. The climate is a lot more harsh and the soil is a lot more rocky there. But yeah, in between, we expect to also see some natural regeneration occurring. Yeah.
And you found, like in the older ones, you did find trees with between.
Yes, exactly. So in the foxholes that were about 4 years old at Phoenix, we saw roughly between 200 and 300 trees already growing there. So they were like kind of this big already.
Cool. So it
So
is
that's what we
working.
It's working.
Yay!
It is not working.
Lies!
It's my last day on the field after 3 months and a half. I'm losing it.
Fair. Very fair. Thank
Take
you
me
so
back.
much. Okay, so let's say you have a restoration project. You got the foxholes part right and you got the community part right. If foxholes are so great, why should you ever plant trees again, right? Well, it turns out there's many projects where it makes a lot of sense to actually plant trees. In India, for example, we support farmers in planting fruit trees in their forest gardens. That restores nature while boosting their nutrition. Here, saplings that grow fruits fast make sense to convince farmers to plant trees. In Senegal, smallholders like Bassirou Sac plant drought-resistant trees around their fields as so-called living fences, which shelter more delicate species and crops he can now grow in his tiny forest. Even in the projects with Phoenix Conservancy and here at TBSE, saplings do have their place. Once the enrichment and the pioneer species have grown, we will plant saplings into the foxholes. For example, of tree species that grow along the fire breaks, because we know that those are species that do well in that type of soil. Or trees like the marula that Cullen mentioned, because it bears fruits that are beneficial to the community. Some species, especially mature forest trees, need to grow in nurseries before being planted. Tossing their seeds into the foxholes wouldn't work. We will eventually plant them in there as well, but only once the microclimate in the foxholes is favorable to those fragile nursery-grown trees. There are other factors that will determine whether or not you decide to plant saplings, like water, for example. Nurseries need enough of it to sustain the saplings. In areas like the Sahel zone in Senegal, for example, there isn't enough of it. So a passive approach where you let nature do its work makes much more sense. It's not that planting saplings is wrong, it's that for them to thrive, conditions have to be right. And that's what's brilliant about foxholes. They create those conditions at scale while involving local communities and creating job opportunities. This approach isn't just for Madagascar. It works in any grass-dominated landscape like many of our projects in Brazil. That's the beauty of what we do. We're now connecting partners across continents so they can adapt foxholes to their own local context. And that's what I want you to take from this video. If we all come together, share our ideas and lessons, we can restore the planet. Some will say it's too late, or that a single project in Madagascar won't make a difference, but they're wrong. It's only too late when the last of us gives up. It took us 4 days to reach our project partners through dry sites, savannas, impossible roads. And in Ecosia projects alone around the world, there's millions of people who every day do the same physical hard work just to restore ecosystems all over the world. We cannot do it alone, but we can each contribute. From using Ecosia to supporting organizations like Phoenix Conservancy or TBSE, or simply engaging with your local environmental NGOs, it all counts. It's not just about regenerating landscapes, though. It's about the stories we tell ourselves. Stories have the power to change the world, and that's why sharing this video with your friends matters. It's also why I've been telling these kind of stories here at Ecosia for the past 11 years. And it's been a wonderful, wild ride. But this is also my last video, at least for now. I'm going on to explore how my storytelling can shape the world in other areas that matter just as much to me. Remember that what we can imagine, we can build. So don't let anyone ever convince you that we can't change the world. We are already changing it. So thanks for watching along for all of these years, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.